I don't have to think about Cody anymore. I don't want to have to talk to him, interact with him, nothing.
I would never, ever buy land like Janelle.
The Browns always thought that Coyote Pass was their destiny. To Cody, it wasn't a property. It was the emblem of his patriarchal vision, a wide-ranging kingdom where every wife could have her own house, and all together they'd create the utopia he vowed. For years, the land just sat there in Flagstaff, untamed and unbuilt, as Cody talked incessantly about the vision. But the truth is, that vision was drowning in a sea of unpaid loans, ever-growing debt, and ceaseless family strife. And now, after years of rumor, the court has finally spoken. Coyote Pass belongs no more to Cody. The judge has sanctioned the unthinkable. The property is being sold at auction. Court records indicate that the property, worth more than $1 million, was wrapped in several mortgages and liens. Though the wives were informed each was entitled to a share, the reality was more complex. And worse, the attorneys for Christine and Janelle contended Cody and Robin had redirected funds intended for construction into personal indulgences, vacations, jewelry, even down payments on Robin's mansion, all purportedly made with money tied to the Coyote Pass vision. When the evidence reached the courtroom, the judge's patience grew thin. What had been envisioned as a family legacy was revealed as a money pit, and the ultimate decision allowed no possibility of appeal. Coyote Pass would be sold off in a public sale, proceeds used to pay debts first, and scraps, if anything, residuaries for the family. For Robin and Cody, it was the ultimate embarrassment. They had, for years, marketed Coyote Pass as the crown jewel of their family history. TLC cameras captured tearful moments of Cody walking on the property, arms spread wide, declaring it to be their calling. But now, that very property will be sold to strangers. The dream is lost, and the court has officially yanked the plug. But here's the bombshell. As insiders familiar with the case reveal, the ruling wasn't about unpaid debts. It was about credibility, trust, and deceit. The judge publicly asked if Cody had deceived his own wives, his creditors, and even the court itself regarding the actual condition of the family finances. And when the ruling came down, Christine couldn't conceal her glee. This wasn't land that was being lost. This was Cody's authority crumbling in front of everybody's eyes. And yet, that is just the tip of the unraveling, because hidden in those same court documents, there are hints that show how far Cody and Robin went to shield themselves while abandoning the rest of the family. And after you hear what the judge discovered about those secret transfers, you'll know why this auction might be the beginning of something much more sinister. When the gavel of the judge came down, everybody figured this was an easy debt case, a matter of outstanding loans and defaulted real estate taxes. But when financial investigators exposed the evidence, the scenario changed immensely. Bank accounts revealed that Coyote Pass funds were quietly transferred to accounts maintained by Robin and Cody. On paper, these were construction-related expenses, payments supposedly assigned to surveying, permits, and future development. But when attorneys investigated further, the evidence was irrefutable. Extensive amounts of those funds were spent on personal indulgence. One of the payment trails directly to Robin's designer jewelry buys, more than $60,000 in exclusive items charged within a year. Another segment funded renovations on the $1.5 million home where Cody and Robin currently reside, including a newly outfitted home theater and imported European furnishings. And perhaps most damning of all, records indicated that as Christine and Janelle were instructed to be patient, thinking their Coyote Pass homes were being held up due to insufficient funds, Cody and Robin were investing money in private savings accounts, categorized as family protection. When those revelations came to light in court, Christine's lawyer wasn't shy. He labeled it a betrayal of trust so complete that it bordered on fraud. The judge, clearly exasperated, directly asked Cody, "If this land was your dream, why were you treating it like your personal bank account?" Witnesses said that Cody stuttered, his characteristic bluster lost under the heat. But the court wasn't done. The subpoenaed documents brought another surprise. Robin's name was on more than one of the secret accounts, and Mary, Janelle, and Christine's names weren't anywhere to be seen. The purported family pot, which had been spoken about on the show for years as a communal fund to be used by all wives and kids, seemed to have been recast as a personal reservoir for use by only Cody and Robin. Christine's face spoke louder than any words. Years of warnings, years of accusing favoritism, years of insisting that something just wasn't balancing. Now all of it was proved in a courtroom for the whole world to witness. For Janelle, who had emotionally and financially invested in the Coyote Pass dream, The betrayal cut especially deep. She had invested her savings in land payments, believing in Cody's leadership. Then she understood that funds had been taken out of there to fund a lifestyle she wasn't even privy to. And the judge's decision spelled it out. This court will not permit Coyote Pass to be a pawn in a shell game of trickery. It will be sold equitably and openly. With those words, the property Cody had referred to as his spiritual legacy was sentenced to the auction block. But here is where things get even darker, because according to sources, it is not just about the land for sale. It is about who may be lurking in the wings, willing to pounce. And the rumor mill has it, it is someone the Browns know intimately. When word first surfaced that Coyote Pass was to be sold through a public auction, real estate observers and followers of the Brown saga presumed it would fall into the hands of developers, or maybe a deep-pocketed investor seeking to cash in on Flagstaff's red-hot land market. But in backroom whispers, speculation arose that this auction was not as simple as it appeared. According to insiders at the court, one of the likely bidders is a person who actually knows the Browns personally, one who has had a long grudge and unresolved issues. Although the judge's directive opened up the auction to every eligible buyer, lawyers reported a curious rush of interest not attached to corporations, but to individuals with a past connection to the family. Speculation instantly turned to Christine, for she was the loudest critic of Cody's favoritism to Robin, and she had gone public with her declaration of independence. Could she, with Janelle's assistance, swoop in and steal the territory out from under Cody and Robin, turning their biggest humiliation into her biggest triumph? Others posited an uglier scenario. Might Mary, the stand, by wife, be secretly collaborating with outside investors to seize the land that represented her decade-long emotional battle. Mary has never been accorded the same respect or attention in the family's power structure, but what if she was primed to pen her own finale to Coyote Pass? And then there is the chance no one will dare speak aloud, that someone from within TLC itself, the network that made the Browns into family names, will ride in. The network has made millions off of the family's drama, and getting Coyote Pass would provide them with both control over the story and a money-making commodity to cash in on down the line. The idea that TLC would end up as the owner of the Browns' so-called dreamland is a twist of events almost too ironic to happen. But Christine's attorney alluded to something much more intimate at the hearing. In his closing arguments, he cautioned Cody to consider who is waiting at the other end of this auction, his voice dripping with implication. That enigmatic comment has fueled a tempest of speculation, ranging from personal vengeance to corporate maneuver. For Robin, the prospect is unacceptable. The possibility of others, strangers, worse yet, family competitors, owning the property she envisioned as her children's inheritance has disturbed her profoundly. Courthouse witnesses described seeing her crying, holding on to Cody for dear life as though the property itself was passing through her hands in slow motion. But here's the kicker. Fresh documents indicate at least 2 unidentified bidders have already been pre-approved by the auction house, both of whom possess sufficient financial clout to overwhelm Cody and Robin, whose funds have been devastated by attorney's fees and outstanding debts. And if the rumors regarding those bidders' identities hold any water, then this auction is not merely about cash, it is about vendetta. For if Christine and Janelle are behind one of those offers, then this won't just be a sale. It will be an elegant dismantling of Cody's whole empire at the hands of the very women he thought he could boss around. And yet, as astonishing as that may be, the court papers disclose an even greater bombshell, something hidden in the small print of the judge's decision that could bar Cody from ever setting foot on Coyote Pass again. As the courtroom hummed with rumors of who would claim Coyote Pass, the judge unobtrusively issued a decision that would slice even deeper than the auction. Hidden in the small print of the official court document was a provision so draconian, so degrading, that even veteran legal observers were shocked. The judge decreed that Cody Brown is permanently excluded from engaging in any bidding process related to Coyote Pass. In simple words, he cannot purchase the land back, directly or indirectly, in his own name or any proxy name. The order also went a step further by clearly saying that no parties currently residing at the Robin Brown residence can engage in the purchase. The courtroom grew silent as the verdict was read. To prohibit someone from bidding on property that is theirs is effectively unprecedented in this kind of case. But the judge made his motivations clear. This court will not allow Mr. Brown to manipulate or reclaim the property through financial subterfuge. The evidence shows repeated abuse of funds, disregard for contractual agreements, and an undermining of trust that cannot be restored. For Cody, it was the final insult. Not only was his dream being taken away, but he was now legally banned from even attempting to reclaim it. The very land he had referred to as the Brown family's destiny was now shut off to him forever. Witnesses said his face was red with rage, his hands clenched on the table as if he could somehow keep the land from slipping away by sheer force of will. Robin, on the other hand, wept. The decision that came down was that not only would they lose their land, but their children's theorized inheritance was being taken from them in front of their eyes. Robin had defended Cody's vision for years, claiming patiently waiting would be rewarded, and their children would one day inherit Coyote Pass. That vision now lay in tatters before them, having been torn apart by a stroke of a judge's pen. Christine, across the aisle, hardly kept a smile from her face. Decades of being told she was selfish for questioning the Coyote Pass plan, and here it was, evidence that her gut had been correct all along. Janelle sat quietly as well, her face stern but tears welling up in her eyes as she mixed vindication and sorrow. She had invested her own personal fortune in the land, believing Cody's assurances. Now she was aware of the fact all those assurances were false right from the beginning. But here's the catch making this even more dramatic. The ruling did not only prevent Cody, it also legally authorized Christine, Janelle, and even Mary to bid if they wished. Actually, the judge specifically went out of his way to stress that all parties not implicated in financial misrepresentation were at liberty to seek ownership. The subtext was obvious. The door was shut to Cody and Robin, but wide open for the wives he had rejected. And worse still, the ban wasn't the only indignity in wait, because buried deep within the financial revelations was a bombshell so shocking that even Cody's most bitter enemies couldn't quite believe it at first. A discovery that showed Cody had been double-dealing Coyote Pass all along. The bid ban was bad enough, but the judge's decree contained something even more incendiary, a financial audit that revealed Cody's explosive double game. For years, he had presented himself as the visionary, the guardian of Coyote Pass, and the only one who could transform that desolate land into a family paradise. But the court documents painted a very different picture, one of clandestine loans, spent money, and dubious backroom deals. Based on records entered into evidence, Cody had secretly borrowed 2 high-interest loans against Coyote Pass using the land as collateral, without the explicit permission of all of the wives who technically owned it. The kicker: a lot of that money never made it to development, surveys, or construction. Instead, receipts indicated that huge sums of those funds went to luxury purchases directly related to Robin's home. Some of the most eye-popping items, almost $200,000 worth of jewelry and designer merchandise, several vacations labeled as busyness retreats, and even tuition for Robin's older kids. Christine and Janelle, who had frequently been requested to tighten their belts and make sacrifices for the benefit of the family, were furious when they realized that their sacrifices had essentially paid for Robin's luxury. Before a judge, Christine's lawyer drove home this point. While my client was cooking dinner on a budget and fretting about her children's future, Mr. Brown was redirecting shared family wealth into designer handbags. Is this the family man's vision or the selfish excess of someone creating an empire for a single wife? The revelations dispelled any fantasy that Cody had been a good steward of the family's funds. Even Mary, who had remained tactically faithful to Cody for decades, looked visibly shaken by the proof. To her, it was not merely a matter of dollars. It was a matter of trust built over decades that was now wrecked. But the financial incompetence did not end there. Probers found that Cody also sought to create a silent partnership with a regional developer, essentially trying to sell pieces of Coyote Pass without discussing this with the rest of the family. Had the transaction pushed through, the Browns could have lost control of their so-called dream property years ago, without even knowing it. The judge wasn't shy about speaking to this. This court considers Mr. Brown's conduct a betrayal not just of legal duty but of family trust. The integrity of the future of this property cannot, and will not, reside in his hands. To those fans who had watched the saga unfold for more than a decade, this news was infuriating and somehow satisfying. It validated long-standing suspicions that Cody's leadership wasn't merely flawed, it was self-serving in its intent. And still, even as his own credibility was eroding, another surprise was lurking in the shadows, because the judge's decision didn't merely reveal Cody's fiscal dishonesty. It brought a new player into the Coyote Pass drama, someone nobody was anticipating to see appearing in that courtroom. Just when the courtroom soap had reached its crescendo, a fresh name emerged in the filings, a bidder nobody in the Brown family could possibly have foreseen. The papers confirmed a third-party investor had formally expressed interest in the auction. Initially, the name didn't mean much to fans, but when journalists began to drill down, jaws were left agape. The enigmatic investor was revealed to be a businesswoman with direct connections to Robin's ex-husband, David Jessup. For years, Robin had characterized David as a mysterious figure from her past, someone who dodged responsibility and left her fighting to get by. But now, through a convoluted maze of LLCs and silent ventures, his family name was once again in the running, this time as a prospective owner of the very property Robin had bet her future on. The symbolism was savage. Picture it, property Robin had once insisted would protect her children's inheritance potentially being passed into the hands of the man she had kept at arm's length for decades. Worse, the papers implied that David himself could still be advising from behind the scenes, his role hidden but unmistakable to those who knew where to find it. Cody's response was explosive. Courtroom witnesses said he pounded his fists on the table, shouting as he asked for an explanation from the judge, but the judge was imperturbable. This is an open auction. Any qualified bidder may bid. Personal history has nothing to do with the process. Robin, on the other hand, appeared as though the earth had given way beneath her. She had worked so hard to solidify herself as Cody's sole authentic partner, the sole wife remaining at his side, only to see her past come back in the most embarrassing possible manner. Christine and Janelle shared hesitant looks, and while they didn't say a word, their faces needed no words. The poetic justice was indisputable. Robin, who had long basked in special treatment, could now lose everything to the same man she had attempted to blot out of the story. But that was not the biggest surprise. Insiders close to the auction disclosed that several LLCs associated with Christine's friends in Utah were also getting ready to place bids. They were no fly-by-night businesses. These were friends and business associates that Christine had been building relationships with since divorcing Cody. It looked like she had been gearing up for this moment for months, waiting for the legal gavel to fall so she could hit at just the right moment. And then there was the most mind-blowing rumor of all, a murmur that TLC itself was quietly thinking about bidding on Coyote Pass. Sources said the network was fed up with Cody's unpredictable antics and believed it could get Coyote Pass as both a filming site and a storytelling tool. Just think of the ratings if the network owns the property and can control its use, holding it up to the Browns like a carrot or a ball and chain. The courtroom drama was now more than just a domestic quarrel. It was a three-way battle of Cody's lost control, his former wife's new autonomy, and external elements eager for their own piece of Coyote Pass. And the judge's last word made it plain: this auction will not be postponed. The process will proceed, and the court will uphold the result, regardless of who possesses the winning bid. For the Browns, that was one thing. By the time the gavel came down, their history would be remade forever. But as the date of the auction drew near, startling new revelations about the land itself surfaced, revelations that would alter not only who was interested, but why. Cody had peddled the notion of Coyote Pass as an emblem, a gritty patch of Arizona ground on which his plural family would finally be united. But as the auction approached, a bombshell about the land itself started to spread. Court documents and property maps disclosed that Coyote Pass wasn't simply a desolate desert tract. It was perched on land teeming with development potential and hidden resources. By virtue of newly submitted appraisals, the house is situated in a rapidly expanding development corridor in Flagstaff. Urban planners had surreptitiously signed off on zoning modifications that would presently qualify for commercial developments, ecotourism lodges, or even upscale residential housing. What Cody once envisioned as 4 distinct family dwellings could now become a multi-million-dollar development project. But that was only the beginning. Environmental surveys suggested the possibility of even greater riches: access to an underground aquifer. For a land where water was scarce, dominion over such a resource could translate into astronomical gains for any developer clever enough to tap it. And at once, Coyote Pass was no longer a family fantasy. It was all about power, wealth, and control. Christine's allies were quick to latch on to this tack. With her expanding network of friends, she could readily collaborate with investors to convert the land into a venture that would not only serve as a hedge against the future for her kids, but also symbolically cancel out Cody's hegemony. Picture Christine, the wife who Cody used to brush off as complaining, taking the very land he was unable to develop and turning it into a money-making venture. Meanwhile, rumors started circulating about TLC's renewed interest. If the network bought the property, they could make money off it forever. Spin-offs, documentaries, even reality shows staged against the backdrop of Coyote Pass. To them, the property wasn't emotional. It was a money-making content opportunity. But the most macabre speculations came from Robin's camp. Sources within the family indicated that Robin was afraid of something uglier: corporate builders swooping in, leveling the ground, and transforming it into something wholly foreign. For her, Coyote Pass was not mere soil and boulders. It was her last connection to Cody's word, the tenuous fiction that her devotion would eventually be repaid. To watch it be auctioned away, then remodeled to be something commercial, would be to watch her dream wither away in real time. And then, just as feelings could not get any higher, investigative reporters revealed one last twist: mineral rights. Hidden far back in the property deeds was a provision stating that whoever bought Coyote Pass might also acquire rights to hidden mineral deposits below the ground. Although no one had any idea what really was buried below, the fact that it might be something was enough to get speculation running wild. Suddenly, the Browns' dream house wasn't a family icon, it was a ticking financial time bomb, and everybody wanted a slice. With Christine and Janelle making their moves, Robin hanging on by a thread to her dream, and outside forces closing in for the kill like vultures, the drama was set for an auction unlike anything the Browns and their audience had ever witnessed. But what nobody knew was that before the gavel even came down, one of the Browns would make a dramatic switch that totally altered the direction of the battle. As the date of the auction approached, tensions within the Brown household came to a boil. Christine and Janelle had been quietly planning in secret, gathering supporters, fundraising, and seeking advice from real estate attorneys. Robin held on to the hope that some kind of miracle would occur and halt the auction entirely. Cody, however, was getting more and more desperate, making late-night phone calls, searching for investors, even calling up former family friends he had long burned bridges with. Then, the betrayal. One of the Brown family members, as per court sources, secretly cut a backroom deal. Whilst the family outside of closed doors battled to save Coyote Pass, this source had already negotiated with an outside developer, providing them privileged access to property information and insider family information. Who was it? Accounts lean in opposing directions. Some assert it was Mary, who finally, after decades of being set aside and degraded, had a chance to achieve financial independence at long last. By informing a developer of the land's mineral and water value, she could ensure herself a payment that would far surpass anything she ever received from the family fund. Others murmur that it was one of Cody's older kids, angry with their dad for years of neglect and favoritism. To them, undermining Cody's final big dream wasn't betrayal. It was justice. And still others implicate Cody himself. Under crushing debt, impending legal bills, and no clear exit, Cody might have staged the sale behind the scenes, planning to emerge with a clandestine share once the property was sold to a developer. If so, then it would be meant that all of his tears, all of his begging, all of his vows to Robin and the rest of the family were all just an act. The infidelity broke what little remained of the family's unity. Janelle had a confrontational phone call that was later leaked too. "You've destroyed this family for money. Cody, you never cared about the land. You never cared about us. You only cared about yourself." Robin, when she heard the gossip, cried in front of close friends, wailing that she had given everything to save this dream, only to see it turn to ash. Her fear wasn't that she would lose the land, but that she would lose the last thing keeping her attached to the family's story of promise. Christine did not weep. She did not shriek. She merely realigned her approach. If betrayal were on the table, the gloves came off. To her, the auction was no longer simply about Coyote Pass. It was about revealing the reality of who the Browns had become. By the time the judge formally sanctioned the auction date, one thing was certain: this was more than a sale of land. This was a family civil war, and each participant had something to win or lose once the gavel came down. But as the auction date got closer, one startling disclosure regarding the rules of the auction would turn everything the Browns believed they were fighting about on its head. The courtroom was filled when the judge came back with his decision regarding how the Coyote Pass auction would go forward. Everyone assumed the process would be simple: land tracts on sale, bids made, and the highest bidder taking it. But then the judge revealed a surprising new stipulation that shook the entire Brown family. Instead of splitting Coyote Pass into small lots, something many had believed, the court had decided to sell the whole property as one block of land. No dividing it into 4 family houses, no half. And whoever was interested in Coyote Pass would have to purchase it all or nothing. The courtroom gasped. Christine's team immediately understood the ramifications. This meant only serious operators with deep pockets could even hope to win the auction. It wouldn't be a sentimental battle between family members. It would be a battle between corporations, developers, and maybe even the TLC network itself. For Cody, the blow was crushing. His initial fantasy of dividing plots among wives was officially kaput. Even if he could raise money with Robin, their combined resources wouldn't approach what wealthy outsiders could bring to the table. His empire, building dream, had been shattered with a single gavel strike. Robin's response was more melodramatic. Witnesses said she wept, her voice barely above a whisper, saying, "This was never supposed to happen. It was supposed to be for us. And in that instant, it became apparent. The judge hadn't merely altered the rules of the auction. He had destroyed Robin's final fantasy of security. Christine and Janelle were not panicked. They had expected something like this would happen and were already talking with possible supporters. Rumors went around that Christine had secretly spoken to an environmental resort builder, proposing to collaborate if they assisted her in obtaining the land. Janelle, on the other hand, was negotiating with local Flagstaff authorities to consider the property a community development project. And then, in a dramatic turn of events, the judge declared one additional rule. Every bidder would have to produce proof of funds at the outset, with no exceptions. No promises, no loose partnerships, no frantic scrambling. If you wanted Coyote Pass, you had to produce the cash, right there, right then. For Robin and Cody, humiliation came immediately. Their financial woes, previously masked by television stardom, would now be exposed to the world. If they couldn't generate funds, they wouldn't even get to bid on the auction. The Browns left that courtroom defeated, splintered and desperate. Christine and Janelle were determined. Robin was shattered, and Cody, for the first time, he appeared powerless. But what none of them knew was that a mystery bidder had already submitted paperwork, someone no one anticipated, someone who could rewrite the conclusion to the Brown family drama. The day of the auction was charged. Cameras strobed outside the courthouse, reporters grouped, and sister wives enthusiasts occupied the streets, anticipating the verdict that would seal the destiny of Coyote Pass. The Browns were seated in pieces, no longer a cohesive family, Christine and Janelle on one side with their subdued confidence, Robin shaking in fear, and Cody pacing like a trapped lion, visibly distraught. The auctioneer brought the room to order. The bidding was going to start. Corporation by corporation, developer by developer, they came forward with their proof of funds, millions of dollars in line and waiting. Christine's partners in her eco-resort appeared with their support. Janelle's coalition of community project interests came forward. Cody and Robin, though, remained still. Without proof of funds, they were eliminated before bidding had even begun. Humiliation was complete, and then the surprise. Just as the auctioneer was about to start the first round, a mystery bidder emerged. Their name was murmured around the room. TLC Network, Inc. Yes, the same company that had made the Browns celebrities, the same network that had broadcasted their saga for more than a decade, was now gearing up to seize control of the land that represented their failed dream. To TLC, Coyote Pass was not merely property. It was a location, a brand, an ever-unfolding narrative that could be exploited for profit. The room outburst. Christine's face turned stony, Janelle shook her head in shock, and Robin almost fainted crying. Cody blew his top, yelling that the property belonged to the family, that TLC didn't have any right, but the judge cut him off. This was an auction, and TLC had all the legal right to bid. The bidding continued higher. The developers dropped out. Christine's supporters persisted, but TLC responded each time. Janelle's alliance attempted to hold out, but the bidding went over their heads. Ultimately, the battle was between Christine's eco-resort group and TLC. Until, with one last devastating defeat, TLC raised the offer above what Christine's investors could match. The gavel came down. Sold to TLC Network. Silence. It was all over. Coyote Pass was no longer a dream of the Brown family. It was corporate land, a backdrop for the very cameras that had once feted them. Christine strode out, head held high, having at least attempted to restore her dignity. Janelle brought up the rear, swearing her children would never again be bound to Cody's failures. Robin cried outright, holding on to what remained of her dream. And Cody, he was left staring into empty space, his grand dream lost, his authority taken away, his kingdom in ruins. But to the people watching at home, the message was stark. The Browns lost more than property. They lost their heritage. And now, the same network that created them was poised to make a profit off their destruction. The sale of Coyote Pass wasn't a closing of the book. It was the killing of the Brown family legend and the start of a new, darker tale, one they would no longer write.